Hello friends, now we are going to see about angiosperms and gymnosperms. So why do we call them as angiosperms? Angio means case, sperms means seeds. So angiosperms means cased seeds or covered seeds. And gymnosperms, gymno means naked, sperms means seeds. So gymnosperms means naked or uncovered seeds. Now coming to gymnosperms, we have cedar, pine and juniper. So gymnosperms which will produce the cones, there is no flower production. The naked seed plants, so the seeds are not covered. The seeds are produced on the scales of the female cones. They are needle-like or scale-like leaves will be there. These are certain characteristic features of gymnosperms. For example, evergreen. Coming to vascular seed producing plants. So we have the vascular and seed producing plants are of two types. One is angiosperms and gymnosperms based on the types of seeds they categorized. Coming to the angiosperms, produces the flower, pollen and fruit. So the seed is enclosed or covered in a fruit. So the fruit is nothing but a ripened part of the plant where the seeds are being protected inside the fruit. So more than half of all the known plants or species are angiosperms. For example, here we have the ovary. So the ovary is nothing but ripened part of the ovary is nothing but the fruit. So inside the fruit, the seeds has been covered and protected. Coming to the types of groups based on the cotyledons. So the seeds are being divided into two types, monocots and dicots. So in the monocots we have single cotyledon. In dicots we have two cotyledons. And we have the veins, sepals, petals, vascular bundles, everything will be common except the cotyledons. Next, flowers. So the functions are reproductive organs of the plant is nothing but flower. So which has petals, nothing but the colored portion of the flower to attract the pollinators. Sepals, the outermost portion of the flower parts which we call it as sepals. So the flowers are colorful to attract the pollinators such as insects and birds. So in this picture you can able to see, so the whole petals together we call it as corolla, which means crown. So the whole sepals together we call it as calyx, which means case enclosing the flower in the bud stage. Next, coming to female parts, pistil. So pistil we call it as female. So this whole thing we call it as pistil. So in the pistil we have certain parts. So the upper part which we call it as stigma. The sticky top of the pistil will form the pollen to be deposited. So next we have the style. So the star connecting the stigma to the ovary. So that's in between part. Ovary which contains the ovules whereas the eggs are found. Ovule will become the seeds if the ovules are get fertilized by the pollen grains. So in this flower also we have the petals, sepals, anthers, filaments, etc. Next, male parts, stamens, anther. So the top of the stamen which we call it as anther which releases the pollen, and this long elongated part which we call it as filament, stalk attaching anther to stem which we call it as filament. Next, types. We have two types of flowers, complete flowers and incomplete flowers. Complete flowers which contain sepals, petals, stamens and pistils. So in this flower we have all the parts, then we call it as complete flowers. Incomplete flowers, so lacking of one or more organs, may have separately sexed flowers which we call it as incomplete flowers. For example, holly. Next, pollination. The transfer of pollen from one plant to the another plant we call it as pollination. So which is being transferred by animals, which we also call it as cross pollination. Usually brightly colored flowers produces the nectar for attraction. Wind and water also will help for cross pollination. Reproduction. Pollen grains reaches the stigma. Each has two haploid sperm cells. So the tube cells will form a tube into the ovary. So the double fertilization will occur. So then the flower parts will die and seeds will develop. So these are all the parts we'll explain in the next video in detail. And next, the life cycle of angiosperms. In this picture, you can able to see the male parts and the male parts and female parts of the flower. So the male parts are nothing but stamens, which will on the anther will produce the pollen grains. Pollen grains are nothing but male gametophyte. So the germinated pollen grain or the male gametophyte attaches on the stigma of the carpel. So which is being released by anther of the stamen. Coming to the pollen tube. So the pollen tube is being developed from the pollen grain which goes through the style and reaches the ovary. Through the micropyle it enters to the embryonic sac. So the embryonic sac is nothing but female gametophyte inside which we have the egg. Now When the egg and the sperm is mated, the fertilization is being completed. Egg is haploid and sperm is haploid, so which unite to form a diploid zygote. And now the zygote will develop into embryo, which we call it as sporophyte, which is diploid in nature. Here, the gametophyte is haploid stage and sporophyte is diploid. Now, the embryo is being developed inside the fruit. Fruit is nothing but the ripened ovary. So now the fruit, inside the fruit the seeds will be there. Now the seeds on favorable, it will germinate the seeds, and later the sporophyte seedling will be developed and will form a mature sporophyte plant with flowers again. And again on the sporophyte will develop the gametophyte. So the sporophyte is diploid in nature and the gametophyte is haploid in nature. So this whole cycle will be happening again and again in the life cycle of angiosperms. Next, coming to fruits. A fruit is a ripened ovary containing the seeds, so which will protect the seeds while developing. There are certain types of the fruits. Here we have discussed about simple, formed by a single ovary. For example, apple and pear. Aggregate, formed by the flowers with many ovaries. For example, blackberry. Multiple fruits, formed from many fused flowers. For example, pineapple. So all these are the examples of the fruits. Okay. Thank you very much. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe to my channel.